The first sound was the sickening crunch of metal on bone, a sound that would forever be seared into the memory of a quiet neighborhood. The second sound, piercing the ensuing silence, was the raw, terrified wail of a child. Leo, at 78 years old, lay crumpled on his own manicured lawn like a discarded doll, the morning newspaper scattered around him like fallen leaves, and standing over him, his small frame shaking with a seismic tremor, was his 7-year-old grandson, Illy. The boy's face was a mask of pure horror, his tiny finger pointing accusingly at the speeding car that had already vanished around the corner. He turned his tear-streaked face to the silent, watching houses and screamed the words that would summon an unlikely judgment. "He hit my grandpa. He hit my grandpa and didn't stop. If you believe that even the toughest exteriors can hide a heart of gold, and that everyone deserves a second chance, then like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us share more stories that prove kindness is the strongest force of all." The paramedics arrived with a grim efficiency, loading Leo's broken body onto a gurney. Illy was whisked away by a panicked neighbor, his sobs echoing down the street. The police came, took notes, and left with little more than a vague description of a dark sedan. The neighborhood, after a brief, horrified stir, settled back into a tense, guilty quiet. The only evidence of the crime was a single, twisted hubcap left behind in the gutter and the dark, ominous stain on the grass where Leo had fallen. The hit-and-run driver was gone, swallowed by the anonymous maze of the city, and with him, the hope for any swift justice. Illy's mother, Sarah, spent her days and nights in a sterile hospital room, holding her father's limp hand. Leo was in a coma, his body a network of tubes and wires, his strong, gentle face swollen and unrecognizable. The doctors spoke in hushed tones of traumatic brain injury, multiple fractures, and a long, uncertain road to recovery. For Sarah, the world had shrunk to the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor and the crushing weight of helpless rage. Who could do this? Who could leave a kind old man who grew prize, winning roses, and read bedtime stories in different voices to die on his own front lawn? Back at home, the neighborhood felt different. The street, once a haven of backyard barbecues and children's laughter, now felt exposed and vulnerable. The crime had revealed a chilling truth. They were not as safe as they thought. The fear was a palpable presence, a fog that clung to the sidewalks and porches. Sarah, on the rare occasions she came home to shower and change, would stare out the window, her gaze fixed on that stain on the grass, a constant, painful reminder of the injustice. Illy had become a shadow of his former self, jumping at every loud noise, his drawings now filled with dark scribbles over stick, figure men. It was on the third day, in the deep, silent hour of 2 a.m., that the rumble began. It started as a low thrum in the distance, a vibration that crept up through the floorboards and into the bones. Sarah, who was trying to sip a cold cup of tea at the kitchen table, froze. The rumble grew louder, coalescing into the distinct, thunderous roar of not one, but many motorcycle engines. Her blood ran cold. Bikers, gangs, the kind of people her father had always warned her about. The sound swelled, deafeningly loud, and then, as suddenly as it had begun, it cut out. One by one, right outside her house, trembling, she crept to the front window and peeled back the edge of the blinds. Her breath caught in her throat. Parked in a neat, menacing row along her curb were a dozen motorcycles, gleaming under the streetlights like resting beasts. And standing among them were their riders, a group of large, heavily built men and women clad in leather vests, their arms adorned with intricate tattoos. They looked like something out of a dystopian nightmare. At their head was a mountain of a man, his beard long and grizzled, his eyes hidden behind mirrored sunglasses despite the hour. His calloused hands rested on his hips as he surveyed the house, his expression unreadable. This was no random stop. They were here for a reason. Fear, sharp and acidic, rose in Sarah's throat. Had the hit-and-run driver sent them? Was this intimidation? She thought of Illy sleeping fitfully upstairs and her father fighting for his life. She had never felt so alone. For a long minute she stood paralyzed, waiting for a knock on the door, for the sound of shattering glass, but nothing happened. The group simply stood there, a silent, leather-clad vigil. After what felt like an eternity, the leader, the man with the grizzled beard, gave a barely perceptible nod. The group moved as one, not towards the house, but towards their bikes. The engines roared back to life, a chorus of raw power that shattered the night's silence, and then they rumbled away, leaving a cloud of exhaust and a profound, unsettling mystery in their wake. The next night, they returned. And the night after that, it became a terrifying ritual. At precisely 2 a.m., the rumble would announce their arrival. They would park, stand in silence for 30 minutes, and then leave. The neighborhood watched from behind locked doors, whispering theories. They were casing the houses. They were a gang marking their territory. The police, when called, said that as long as they were on public property and not causing a disturbance, there was little they could do. Sarah's fear began to curdle into a desperate, simmering anger. This was a form of psychological torture, a nightly reminder of her powerlessness. After a week of this, something in Sarah snapped. The fear was exhausting, but the anger was fuel. On the 7th night, as the engines cut out, she threw open her front door and marched onto the porch, her entire body trembling with a courage she did not feel. The cold night air bit through her thin robe. The bikers turned as one to face her, their expressions hidden in shadow. "What do you want?" she shouted, her voice cracking. "Why are you doing this? Haven't we been through enough?" The large leader stepped forward, his boots heavy on the pavement. He slowly removed his sunglasses, and in the dim light, Sarah saw his eyes. They were not the cold, dead eyes she had imagined. They were a clear, startling blue, and etched with a deep, weary sadness. He held up a massive, placating hand. "Ma'am," his voice was a low rumble, deeper than his motorcycle's engine. "My name is Jax. We're not here to cause you trouble." "Then why?" Sarah demanded, tears of frustration now mixing with her anger. "You scare my son. You scare me every night." "Why?" Jax looked down at his boots for a moment, then back at her, his gaze direct and unwavering. "We heard what happened to your father. We saw it on the local news, the story about the hit and run." He gestured to the group behind him. "We're the iron sinners, most of us. We haven't lived saintly lives. We've made mistakes, done time, been the people folks like you cross the street to avoid. But we have a code, and the lowest form of life on this earth is someone who hurts the defenseless and doesn't have the guts to face the consequences." He explained then, in his gruff, simple way. They had a network. They heard things in bars, in garages, in the underbelly of the city that the police never could. They had put the word out. The description of the car, the unique hubcap left behind, it was all they needed. Their nightly vigil, he said, was a promise to the man in the hospital and to the boy who cried on the lawn that someone was watching. That the driver would not simply get away with it. They were there to stand guard, not to intimidate her, but to intimidate the darkness that had visited her family. They were a wall of leather and muscle against the tide of injustice. The revelation washed over Sarah, so immense and unexpected that her legs felt weak. These men and women, these iron sinners, weren't monsters. They were avenging angels in black leather. The fear that had gripped her for a week melted away, replaced by a wave of emotion so powerful it stole her breath. She began to cry, not tears of fear, but of overwhelming, soul-cleansing gratitude. The next day, everything changed. Jax and a few of the others didn't just come at night. They came in the afternoon. One of them, a quiet man called Doc, who had been an army medic, started fixing the loose shingles on Sarah's roof. A formidable woman named Raven began weeding Leo's prized rose garden, her tattooed hands surprisingly gentle with the delicate plants. They brought groceries. They played catch in the yard with a silent Dilly, whose fear of the big, loud motorcycles was slowly transforming into awe. The neighborhood, once fearful, now watched in wonder. The wall of intimidation had become a shield of protection. The roar of the engines was no longer a sound of dread, but an anthem of solidarity. Sarah's house, which had been a monument to tragedy, was becoming a beacon of unexpected community. The breakthrough came from a tip called into a burner phone Jax carried. A mechanic in a scrapyard on the city's edge, a man who owed Jax a favor, had seen a dark sedan matching the description with a fresh dent and a missing hubcap. The owner, a Weasley man named Rick, was trying to sell it for parts, no questions asked. The Iron Sinners moved with quiet, efficient purpose. They didn't take the law into their own hands. Instead, they surrounded the scrapyard, a silent, imposing presence, while Jax called his contact in the police department. The police arrived to find Rick so terrified of the leather-clad sentinels that he confessed on the spot, weeping with relief at being taken into official custody. Justice, delayed and denied, had finally arrived, delivered on the back of a motorcycle. The story doesn't end with a grand, dramatic finale, but with a quiet, profound moment of healing. Weeks later, Leo was finally well enough to come home, frail and needing a walker, but alive. As Sarah helped him slowly up the front walk, he stopped, his eyes taking in his pristine rose bushes and his freshly painted house, and then he saw them. The Iron Sinners were all there, lined up along the street, having traded their nightly vigil for a morning welcome. They were not wearing their tough, guy scowls, they were smiling. Jax stepped forward. "Welcome home, sir," he said, his voice softer than usual. Leo, his eyes glistening with tears, looked from Jax to Sarah to a beaming Illy, who was now clutching Raven's hand. The old man's lower lip trembled. He understood then that the world was not merely a place of random cruelty, but also of breathtaking, unexpected kindness. It was a lesson taught not from a pulpit or a textbook, but from the hearts of so-called sinners. The scar on his lawn would forever remain, but it was no longer a stain of violence. It had become a marker, a reminder of the day the rumbling thunder of engines brought not a storm, but an army of grace. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that heroes come in all shapes and sizes, please let us know by sharing this video with someone who needs to see it. Your likes and comments help spread this message of hope. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more stories that shine a light in the darkness. Before we end, I have a special request for you all. Please tell us in the comments below, when was a time that a stranger's kindness completely changed your day or even your life? We read every single one.